Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova. I feel like I haven't seen all of you in about 48 hours. This week is a special week. It is Shabbat Shuva. It is the Shabbat that falls between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and Shuva, like tshuva, it is the Shabbat of turning or returning to our true and best selves. It is a time that we are to finish seeking and granting forgiveness for our intentional and unintentional sins. We know that asking for forgiveness can be hard, but during this period, we are supposed to ask forgiveness from those whom we wronged. We are commanded to consider our actions of the past year, to admit our wrongdoings, repair the damage that we can, and seek forgiveness with a contrite and open heart. But often, we're so focused on seeking forgiveness for the poor decisions that we made that at times we forget about the importance of granting forgiveness. It can be hard, actually, sometimes harder to grant forgiveness to someone that's hurt us, especially if that hurt was intentional. But that is part of our challenge during these heavy days. We tend to carry our hurt and our resentment like badges. Giving it up means we need to find a way to move forward, even when it's hard. But forgiving someone doesn't mean that we can't or shouldn't also learn from the incident. We are commanded to grant forgiveness to those who seek it with sincerity and remorse. But nowhere in our tradition does it tell us that we have to forget the harm that was caused. And in fact, at times, remembering the harm can be vital to our self-preservation. For example, let's imagine you have a friend with whom you've shared many personal details of your life over the years. You've always felt comfortable because they've always held it confidential. But one day they let a piece of hurtful information slip. They realize their mistake, they admit it, and they ask you to forgive them. Not wanting to throw away years of friendship, you forgive them, meaning you forgive the indiscretion and you move past the hurt and you allow the friendship to continue. But when the next piece of important information comes, do you share it with them? The reality is that until they're able to earn back your trust, you may not choose to share important or private details with them. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. By remembering the harm, we are cautioned against putting ourselves in the same vulnerable position. Judaism teaches us that tshuva, repentance, is not complete until we have actually changed our behavior, meaning that we're in the same position and we're able to make a better decision. This means that the harm shouldn't be repeated. And yet, we know human nature. Back to that friend who couldn't keep your secret. Even if they've taken great pains to no longer be a gossip, there is still a chance that they may slip and share something that you would rather be kept confidential. Remembering their weakness allows you to avoid being in the situation where they will have information that you prefer not to be shared. You can still have a close relationship with this person, albeit a slightly different one. Not forgetting allows us to change our actions and expectations of the relationship so that we're not hurt again. In some ways, by changing our expectations, we are setting the relationship up for success, and we could even be strengthening it. There are times that we should remember the harm that's inflicted so that we can avoid it in the future. And in fact, our brains are hardwired to do that. Think of a child who reaches out and touches the hot pan, and he burns himself. He learns to associate that action with pain. So the next time he's tempted to touch a hot pan, he hopefully will remember the first painful experience and make a better choice. If the child were to forget, then he may be apt to repeat the mistake over and over, burning himself again and again. So how do we forgive without forgetting? How do we let go of the pain and the resentment while still retaining the lessons learned? Forgiveness is as much about the giver as it is the seeker. When we are angry and carrying a grudge, it can actually be us that suffers from the weight of carrying that baggage. It is often said that by carrying around our hurts and resentments, we are allowing other people to live rent-free in our head. And anywhere that is rent-free is problematic. If the harm they caused us is still impacting our daily lives, then not only are we allowing their actions of the past to have hurt us, but we continue to let their actions affect us until we give ourselves permission to move on. By forgiving someone, we evict them from taking up rent-free space in our mind and heart, and we move past the problematic episode. While never easy, forgiving someone does not mean that we have to accept that their actions were okay. It simply means we have to accept that the actions happened, acknowledge our hurt, and make a decision to move forward anyway. Once we let that resentment go, not only does it free up the space that they were taking, but it allows us to have empathy for them once again and grant them forgiveness. The task is never easy, but it is freeing for us and for them when we're able to accomplish it. But forgiving an action does not mean that we can't or shouldn't learn to do better in the future. Dr. Betsy Stone teaches us that while forgiveness is important, it can also be just as important to not forget. It can actually prevent further harm and disappointment. She writes, "We teach each other who we are through our behavior. When I harm another person, my behavior speaks louder than my apology. Our tradition teaches us that true repentance only comes when faced with the same circumstances, I behave in a better way. Repentance isn't about saying I'm sorry. It's about change. But change doesn't only happen to the atoner. Change happens to the person harmed. When we learn who the other person is, we learn who the other person is and what we can and should expect of them. Forgetting is denying myself the opportunity to learn. If we let each other down, if we cause each other harm, we should learn. My expectations of you should adapt, not out of a sense of righteous indignation, but because I can learn so that next time I won't expect more than you can offer. I won't set you up to disappoint me." By forgiving and not forgetting, by changing ourselves in response to the hurt, we are actually paving the way for a more successful relationship. In other words, if I can change my expectations so that they meet your abilities, I can set our relationship up for far more success than if I keep expecting something you are not capable of. Our task is not easy, but this is our challenge. Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova.